Well, I suppose it's the effect that it's had on me is the main thing is not being able to walk from it, and the what sort of muscle weakness, the effect that it has on you. So I don't think sort of other ways it doesn't affect me. I think that was the hardest part, was losing, being unable to walk. But I've lost sort of strength in my arms as well. But I can still do quite a bit. They're not that badly affected. So really, that's the main sort of things with me. It makes everything more difficult. But I sort of I still manage to do everything that I did before, apart from sort of getting down on the floor and doing something. So like in the house, I can't. Especially in the wheelchair, you tend to take all the lumps out of the skirting boards and everything, Whereas years ago, I just get down and rub them down and paint them, That's something I can't do now. But most other stuff, it hasn't affected me too bad. So I think I'm lucky that the main effects came sort of later in life, because I wasn't actually diagnosed till I was in my 50s. I think I was diagnosed in 2006, and I was still walking then. I walked till 2014, and I used to have quite a lot of falls and everything. Slightest thing, and you tend to trip up, on the slightest sort of unevenness and this sort of thing. But I was walking up to I think it was September 2014, and we were on holiday, and I fell awkwardly getting into, because I was still driving then as well. Well, I am still driving now, but I was driving, from a normal sort of perspective, and I was transferring from a manual chair into the car and fell back and cracked the top of my pelvis. And I was in hospital for a few weeks. But that was enough for my sort of muscle strength to diminish, and I haven't walked since. Well, I used to be a motor engineer, so that was a bit of a bitter thing, because the guy I was working for, I was still walking at the time, and he sort of pushed me out, sort of tried to use a sort of health and safety thing to push me out. I was quite bitter about that. But most things, because it didn't really have a huge effect on me till, I would sort of say, early 2000. So I was then, I must have been around sort of 47, 48, and started feeling there was something not quite right. There's very few people do sort of ask, what's wrong with you, sort of thing, because one of the things I used to get when I was still walking and things, people would say, oh, you're just lazy, and things like that, Yeah, not too pleasant. Yeah, I don't think many people, it's not something that's that well known. It's surprising how many people will come up, and, what's happened to you then, sort of thing, wondering if you've fallen or something like that, and that's why you're in a wheelchair. And just for them to have sort of a knowledge of the condition itself, I suppose, which is, you can... usually I would say, well, I have a muscle wasting condition. Most people are sort of a bit,
What's that then?
Because the most common thing you get from people, mind, is, you can move about in that, pop along in your wheelchair, can't you, And you feel like, saying, well, I'd rather be walking. Because one of the worst problem, I suppose, upset me the most was... because I was still working in a garage, and I sort of thought myself, well, I'm not going to be doing this for a lot longer. I knew it was going to sort of end my career, sort of thing. So I started thinking, well, I'll look for something in the motor trade, which I could sort of stay in the motor trade, but do a different sort of more in an office sort of background, So I started applying for jobs. One of the worst things was the first thing they started saying was, you need a lot of computer know-how, So I did a computer course then over a couple of years. But it was still, you sort of felt, as soon as you went for an interview, as soon as the people saw you in a wheelchair, even though, I'd put that I was disabled. And I think one of the worst things was I was perfectly to the standard to do the couple of the jobs. I was sort of looked to be like a service advisor in the garage where, people would bring the cars in and you could virtually say, well, this is what the car needs and this sort of thing, and possibly do bills and things like that for them, and I was perfectly up to the standard, perfectly able to do it. But you always used to feel as soon as you walked into that door and saw someone, you sort of think, no way, you're just not get it. I think things possibly a bit better now, and it used to really get to me that some of the places as well would be car dealers who were dealing in mobility cars, and you'd sort of think, well, surely I'd be ideal here. But I got a couple of second interviews and that was it. I never did get a job,